When we think about science, we usually picture pristine lab coats, right? Maybe a big eureka moment. But what if I told you it's actually about cosmic level bad luck, genius ideas that get totally misplaced, and just heroic battles against all the odds? Well, today, using Bill Bryson's fantastic A Short History of Nearly Everything as our map, we're going to get into the real, messy, and totally human story of how we figure stuff out. So let's just start with the biggest question of all, right? How do we actually discover the truth about our universe? I mean, how does science really, truly happen?
We all have this image, don't we? Science is this clean, straight line of progress. One genius has an aha moment after another, but the reality? It's so much messier. It's a story of hitting dead ends, having just the worst luck, losing your notes, and sometimes just being heroically stubborn. It's not a story of machines. It's a human story, through and through.
Okay, to really get a feel for how messy and human this all is, let's kick things off with a story, and this one, it's a tale of such incredible, spectacular bad luck that it's almost funny. So let's meet the man who might just be the unluckiest astronomer in all of history. So this is Guillaume Le Gentil. Back in the 1760s, he was part of this huge global scientific project. The goal was to watch the planet Venus cross in front of the sun. It's a super rare event, and if you could time it from different spots on Earth, you could, believe it or not, figure out the size of the entire solar system, a huge deal. Le Gentil's job was simple: get to India and watch.
Yeah, simple. Except his journey turned into this 11-year saga of failure. Okay, get this. He sets off in 1760. Plenty of time. But a year later, on the big day, he's stuck on a ship that's rocking back and forth because of a war. Totally impossible to make an observation. So what does he do? He decides to just wait in India for the next transit, which is a full 8 years away. Can you imagine? So 1769 finally rolls around, the day is perfect, the sky is crystal clear, and then, I'm not kidding, a single tiny cloud slides in front of the sun for the exact few minutes of the transit. Poof, gone. And his trip home? Oh, it gets worse. He gets dysentery, loses a year, then his ship almost sinks in a hurricane. It is just a masterclass in terrible, terrible luck. And the final kicker? After 11.5 years of accomplishing absolutely nothing, he finally makes it back to France, only to find out he's been declared legally dead. And his relatives? Oh yeah, they've already taken and spent his entire estate. I mean, wow. The point here is that science isn't always about being the smartest person in the room. Sometimes it's just about having the sheer grit to endure a level of failure that would make literally anyone else pack it in and go home.
So we've seen how bad luck can completely derail things, but it's not always about that. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs in history depend on something as simple as a chance conversation, or they come from someone you would never, ever expect.
Let's travel back to 1684. The smartest people in London are all scratching their heads over one huge question. What shape is a planet's orbit? What's the math behind it? Nobody knows. So the astronomer Edmund Halley, the guy with the comet, is completely obsessed. He decides to go visit the one person who might have a clue, the notoriously cranky and reclusive Isaac Newton. So Halley asks him the question that stumped everyone, and Newton, without even hesitating for a second, just says, "Oh, it's an ellipse." Halley is floored. How could he possibly know that? And Newton just casually replies, "Why, I've calculated it." Just think about that for a second. He had solved one of the fundamental mysteries of the entire universe, and then apparently it just slipped his mind.
And this is where it gets so human, it's almost unbelievable. Halley, who's probably about to have a heart attack from excitement, asked to see the proof. And Newton just starts looking through his papers, shuffling things around, and he can't find it. He literally misplaced the paperwork for one of the single greatest discoveries in the history of
Seriously, if it wasn't for Halley, we might never have gotten Newton's masterpiece, the Principia. The only reason Newton rewrote his lost work was because Halley basically wouldn't leave him alone about it. And then, the story gets even crazier. The Royal Society, who was supposed to publish it, said no. Why? Because they'd just lost all their money publishing a massive flop called The History of Fishes. So Halley, who was not a wealthy guy, paid to publish the whole thing out of his own pocket. Newton, by the way, didn't contribute a single penny. But genius isn't always found in a Cambridge professor's messy office. Sometimes, a world-changing idea comes from the very last place anyone would think to look. So, I want you to meet James Kroll. In the 1860s, Kroll worked as a janitor at a university in Glasgow. But after his shifts, he'd go to the university library and just teach himself. Physics, astronomy, you name it. And in 1864, he published a theory that was absolutely revolutionary. He was the first to figure out that ice ages are caused by slow, cyclical changes in the Earth's orbit around the sun. Let that sink in. A janitor, while mopping floors, basically laid the groundwork for modern climate science. Okay, so we've got bad luck and we've got forgotten genius. But what happens after you make the discovery? What if the truth you found is inconvenient? What if it threatens a massive industry? Well, that's when the real fight starts. Our last story isn't just about finding a fact. It's about the brutal, decades-long battle to make the world actually listen.
This is the story of Claire Patterson. In the 1940s, his goal was purely academic. He wanted to figure out the definitive age of the Earth. But he hit a wall, a really weird one. No matter how clean he made his lab, every single rock sample he tested was massively contaminated with lead. It was everywhere. And then it hit him. This contamination wasn't ancient, it was new. It was coming from leaded gasoline, which had only been around since the 20s. And in that moment, his mission changed completely, from dating the planet to saving the people on it. And the picture he uncovered was terrifyingly simple. Before 1923, the year they started putting tetraethyl lead in gasoline, there was basically no lead in our atmosphere. It just wasn't there. After 1923, the levels started climbing and climbing and climbing, steadily poisoning the air we breathe, the ground we walk on, everything.
Now, you'd think he'd be hailed as a hero, right? Nope. The lead industry was incredibly powerful, and they came after him. Hard. His research funding was pulled. The American Petroleum Institute canceled his contract. Even the U.S. Public Health Service dropped him. He was basically kicked out of the very scientific panels that should have been listening to him. He spent decades fighting this lonely, uphill battle, and for all those decades, the industry just kept denying the facts. I mean, look at this. As late as 2001, they were still claiming there was no proof that leaded gas was a threat. It's just staggering. But Patterson never, ever gave up. And his perseverance is the reason we have things like the Clean Air Act. He's the reason lead was finally banned from gasoline, and it's no exaggeration to say his fight saved countless lives. So what do we take away from all this? I think it's that the history of knowing is never, ever a straight line. It's a deeply human story. It's a story of Lejontiel's soul-crushing bad luck, of Newton's forgotten genius saved only by Halley's nagging, of a janitor named James Kroll seeing what no one else could, and of Claire Patterson's fierce, lonely fight for the truth. It shows us that science is about more than just having the idea. It's about perseverance, happy accidents, and fighting for that idea against all odds.
And that really leaves us with a final question, doesn't it? If this is how science really works, if it's this messy, this accidental, this human, it makes you wonder, what breakthrough calculation is sitting misplaced on a desk somewhere right now? And what janitor or librarian or mail carrier holds the key to the next great leap in our understanding? Thanks for joining us.